Long before European settlers arrived, the land now known as the United States was home to hundreds of Native American tribes, each with distinct cultures and ways of life. From the icy tundras of the north to the vast plains of the south, tribes like the Hopi, Zuni, and Plains people flourished, forming powerful alliances like the Iroquois Confederacy and the Sioux Alliance to protect their land and way of life. Conflicts over territory and resources were common, but everything changed with the arrival of Europeans. Goods like guns and horses created power shifts among the tribes, fueling further rivalries. However, a new, more dangerous enemy soon emerged: the United States Army, coming not for trade but for land and dominance. Tribes now had to unite against this common foe in a fight for survival. Welcome to *Natives Journal. Today, we delve into the legendary Native American tribes that struck fear into the heart of the U.S. Army. These tribes weren't just defending land, they were protecting a way of life, steeped in spirituality and tradition, against an enemy determined to erase it all. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned as we reveal the most feared warriors in history. Among the names that resonate through time, few inspire awe like the Lakota Sue. Master Horsemen, the Lakota's mastery of cavalry tactics and deep spiritual connection to the Black Hills of South Dakota made them relentless in battle. The U.S. Army found itself not only facing skilled warriors but men who believed they were fighting for their very souls. Known for their belief in spiritual destiny, the Lakota performed rituals like the Sundance, drawing strength from their connection to the land. These spiritual warriors refused to back down, even when outnumbered and outgunned. It was this unwavering bravery, rooted in a deep spiritual purpose, that made them one of the most feared tribes on the continent. The Black Hills, sacred to the Lakota, became the battleground for their fierce resistance, as they fought to preserve their way of life. But the Lakota were not alone. The Blackfoot Confederacy, the Comanche, and the Nez Perce also left an indelible mark on the U.S. military, using guerrilla tactics, superior knowledge of the land, and an unmatched ability to fight under pressure. Each of these tribes brought unique challenges to the U.S. Army. The Comanche, for example, dominated the southern plains with their incredible horseback riding skills and relentless raids. The Blackfoot Confederacy, known for their fierce resistance in the north, posed a constant threat to both settlers and soldiers. The Nez Perce, led by Chief Joseph, became famous for their remarkable flight across the western United States, outmaneuvering U.S. forces in one of the most legendary retreats in history. These tribes didn't just fight, they outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outlasted their enemies, becoming legends of resistance. The battles were fierce and the stakes were high. For these tribes, it wasn't just about winning wars, it was about surviving against an overwhelming force determined to wipe out their culture and existence. The U.S. Army, equipped with advanced weapons and tactics, often underestimated the determination and resilience of these Native American warriors. As the Lakota, Comanche, Blackfoot, and Nez Perce fought to preserve their lands and people, their bravery became the stuff of legends. Their stories echo through history, reminding us of a time when the fate of a people hung in the balance. So, which tribes were the most feared by the U.S. Army? The Lakota, with their spiritual ferocity and unmatched horseback warfare, certainly rank among the most terrifying. But the Comanche, whose brutal raids and dominance over the southern plains earned them a fearsome reputation, were equally formidable. The Nez Perce, whose stunning escape across the country remains a testament to their strategic brilliance, also left an indelible mark on history. And let's not forget the Blackfoot Confederacy, whose sheer tenacity in defending their homeland made them a constant thorn in the side of both settlers and the military. These were no ordinary warriors, they were spiritual fighters, defenders of their culture and protectors of their people. They weren't just resisting an enemy, they were preserving a way of life. In this battle for survival, they left behind stories of unimaginable bravery, resilience, and unyielding resistance. And while they may have been outnumbered and outgunned, their spirit remained unbroken. Join us next time as we continue to explore the incredible history of Native American tribes and their legendary fights for survival. The Lakota Sioux's military dominance wasn't about sheer numbers. It was about precision, strategy, and their unmatched mastery of horseback warfare. They transformed the vast plains of the Midwest into a battlefield where every inch of land was familiar territory. Moving swiftly, they struck with lethal accuracy and vanished before the U.S. Army could retaliate. Their advantage lay in their deep knowledge of the terrain and their unparalleled horsemanship, making them nearly unstoppable in open-field combat. Yet, the U.S. government knew that to weaken the tribes, they needed to target their lifeblood, the buffalo. The extermination of buffalo, essential for food, clothing, and shelter, was a cruel strategy aimed at forcing the Native Americans into submission. But the Lakota did not fall easily. During their darkest days, the Lakota found hope in the ghost dance, a spiritual movement that promised the return of the buffalo and the resurrection of their ancestors. This religious revival, led by Paiute medicine men, spread hope across the Great Plains, uniting tribes in a common belief that they could reclaim their land from the settlers. The Lakota wore special, ghost shirts, believed to be bulletproof, fueling their resistance and striking terror into the hearts of white settlers. However, this rising fervor reached its tragic climax at the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890, where hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children were slaughtered by the U.S. Army. It marked the brutal end of the ghost dance movement, but the Lakota's spirit was far from broken. Despite the massacre, the legacy of the Lakota Sioux endured. Their resilience in the face of impossible odds made them legendary. The U.S. Army feared them not just for their physical strength, but for the unity and spiritual power that fueled their resistance. The Lakota were more than warriors, they were defenders of a way of life that spanned centuries. Their culture, rooted in a deep connection to the land, shaped their fierce independence. No battle exemplified this more than the infamous Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, where Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho forces annihilated General Custer's battalion in one of the most legendary defeats in U.S. military history. Custer, underestimating the strength and resolve of the Lakota, led his men into an ambush, and the result was total annihilation. It was a humiliating defeat for the U.S. Army, and a moment of triumph for the Lakota, cementing their reputation as one of the fiercest Native American tribes. But Little Bighorn wasn't the only battle where the Lakota proved their military might. The Great Sioux War of 1876, led by iconic leaders like Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, showcased the tribe's indomitable spirit. Crazy Horse, known for his tactical brilliance, and Sitting Bull, revered for his spiritual leadership, orchestrated a military campaign that left the U.S. Army reeling. Before this, the Lakota had already made their mark in the Red Cloud War, a conflict over the Bozeman Trail. Red Cloud, a brilliant tactician, united the Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Northern Arapaho tribes to fight against U.S. forces. In 1866, the Fetterman fight became one of the worst defeats for the U.S. Army, with 81 soldiers killed by the Lakota and their allies. Red Cloud's victory forced the U.S. government to abandon its forts along the trail and sign the Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868, temporarily granting the Lakota control over the sacred Black Hills. It was a rare moment in history where Native Americans negotiated from a position of strength. But peace was short-lived. The discovery of gold in the Black Hills brought settlers rushing into Lakota territory, reigniting conflict. Leaders like Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull refused to back down, taking up arms once again. While Red Cloud advocated for negotiation, Crazy Horse led his warriors into battle, and Sitting Bull's spiritual leadership united the tribes in their fight for survival. Together, these leaders formed an impenetrable force against U.S. expansion, becoming symbols of Native American resistance. The U.S. Army struggled to subdue the Lakota, facing an enemy whose military tactics were far superior on their home turf. The Lakota were not just warriors, they represented a cultural and spiritual force that defied the westward expansion of the United States. Their way of life was intricately tied to the land, and they fought to preserve it with every fiber of their being. The U.S. Army, despite its advanced weaponry and superior numbers, found itself constantly outmaneuvered by the Lakota's guerrilla tactics and mastery of mounted assaults. The Lakota were swift, strategic, and knew how to exploit the weaknesses of their enemies. Every battle was a testament to their resilience and their unwillingness to surrender their land and culture. The U.S. Army's defeat at Little Bighorn was a turning point, but the war was far from over. The Lakota continued to fight in the Great Sioux War, refusing to give up their lands despite the overwhelming pressure from settlers and the military. Crazy Horse, a legendary figure, led his people with unparalleled courage, while Sitting Bull's spiritual guidance gave them the strength to carry on. Their ability to mobilize large groups of warriors and their deep knowledge of the plains made them a formidable enemy. Even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, the Lakota stood their ground. Years of warfare against the U.S. government left the Lakota battered but not broken. Their military campaigns, whether in the Red Cloud War or the Great Sioux War, showcased their tactical brilliance and their deep connection to their homeland. The Black Hills, sacred to the Lakota, were at the center of their struggle. Even as the U.S. government encroached on their territory, the Lakota fought fiercely to protect what was theirs. The U.S. Army, though technologically advanced, could not match the Lakota's understanding of the land and their ability to strike swiftly and decisively. In the end, the Lakota's resistance wasn't just about land, it was about survival. They were fighting to preserve their culture, their people, and their future. The U.S. Army may have won many battles, but they never fully defeated the spirit of the Lakota Sioux. Their legacy endures in American history as one of the most feared and respected Native American tribes. The Lakota's story is one of bravery, resilience, and an unbreakable bond with the land they called home. Despite the tragedies they endured, their spirit remains unshaken, and their fight for survival continues to inspire generations to come. The Lakota Sioux, for relentless resistance and unparalleled military skill, carved their name into the annals of American history. They were more than warriors, they were guardians of their homeland, embodying the fierce resolve of Native Americans to defend their way of life. Their legacy endures as a symbol of unyielding strength, resilience, and unity in the face of an ever-expanding U.S. Army. The Lakota's story, marked by their spiritual connection to the land, resonates today as a testament to the determination of indigenous peoples who stood their ground, despite overwhelming odds. But the Lakota were not the only Native American tribe to inspire fear and respect in the U.S. military. The Apache, often considered one of the fiercest tribes in history, earned their formidable reputation for their ability to survive in the harsh deserts of the Southwest. The very name, Apache, derived from the Zuni word for enemy, reflected the deep fear they instilled in those who encountered them, particularly the Spanish and later, American forces. The Apache's mastery of guerrilla tactics and their intimate knowledge of the unforgiving desert environment made them a nearly unstoppable force. Long before the U.S. Army clashed with the Apache, they had already been engaged in brutal conflicts with Mexico. As Spanish settlers encroached on Apache territory, raids became a way of life for the tribe. The Apache were notorious for their lightning-fast strikes, pillaging settlements, taking captives, and disappearing back into the desert before a counterattack could be organized. This unpredictability made them particularly feared, as no one knew when or where they would strike next. Their ability to traverse vast distances on foot, evading pursuit in rugged terrain, only heightened their status as some of the most dangerous adversaries in the region. The harsh desert molded the Apache into a people of extraordinary resilience. Living in what is now Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and parts of Mexico, the Apache thrived where others would perish. Their survival skills, honed over generations, made them resourceful warriors who could outlast any invading force. But it wasn't just their desert survival that made them formidable, it was their brutal methods of warfare. Stories of Apache warriors torturing their captives, often in unimaginably horrific ways, struck fear into both settlers and soldiers alike. The Apache were relentless in their pursuit of vengeance, taking scalps and leaving devastation in their wake. This reputation for brutality was solidified through their bloody conflicts with Mexico, where Apache raids terrorized villages and settlements. In response, the Mexican government placed bounties on Apache scalps, further escalating the violence. The cycle of raids and retribution turned the Apache into one of the most feared Native American tribes, a status they maintained well into their confrontations with the U.S. Army. When the U.S. government began pushing westward, forcing other native tribes onto Apache lands, tensions erupted into war. The Apache viewed these settlers as invaders, and they fought back with a vengeance. For decades, the U.S. Army struggled to subdue the Apache, finding it nearly impossible to overcome their mastery of guerrilla warfare. The Apache's ability to strike quickly and retreat into the vast desert made them an elusive and dangerous enemy. Their small, highly mobile groups could evade large military forces, launching surprise attacks and vanishing into the mountains and canyons before reinforcements could arrive. The Apache's fierce independence and refusal to surrender made them a thorn in the side of both the Mexican and U.S. governments. Their raids were not just about survival. They were about asserting dominance over their land and defending it from all invaders. Even as the U.S. military deployed increasing numbers of troops and resources to quell the Apache resistance, the tribe remained defiant, using every advantage their knowledge of the land provided. The Apache, like the Lakota Sioux, were more than just a military threat. They represented the last stand of a way of life that had endured for centuries. Their culture, rooted in the harsh desert and defined by their fierce commitment to defending their homeland, made them one of the most iconic Native American tribes to resist U.S. expansion. While the U.S. Army eventually subdued many Native American tribes, the Apache's relentless resistance and brutal tactics left an indelible mark on history. Their story, like that of the Lakota Sioux, is a reminder of the incredible strength and resilience of indigenous peoples who fought to protect their land, their people, and their way of life. Both the Lakota Sioux and the Apache stand as towering figures in the history of Native American resistance. Their military prowess, cultural strength, and spiritual conviction transformed them into legendary tribes, feared by the U.S. Army and revered by their people. While the tides of history may have turned against them, their legacy as fierce defenders of their homelands lives on, reminding us of the enduring spirit of the Native American tribes who fought against impossible odds to protect their heritage. The Apache's resistance against the U.S. Army is a story of remarkable military genius, resilience, and unbreakable will. Led by figures like Cochise, Mungas Coloradas, Victorio, and the legendary Geronimo, the Apache defied all odds, turning the vast, unforgiving desert landscapes of the Southwest into their greatest advantage. These leaders, through tactical brilliance and a deep connection to the land, united the various Apache bands, creating a formidable force against both Mexican and U.S. invaders. Cochise, the revered chief of the Chokanan band of the Chiricahua Apache, played a pivotal role in shaping Apache resistance. His strategic mind and leadership in battle left an indelible impact on his tribe and their fight for survival. One of the defining moments in the Apache-U.S. conflict came during the Mexican-American War when a tragic misunderstanding sparked the brutal Apache Wars. American forces, mistakenly believing that Cochise's tribe had kidnapped a young boy during a raid, captured Cochise and his group. Despite his claims of innocence and offer to assist in finding the boy, Cochise was imprisoned. In a daring escape, Cochise managed to flee, but several members of his group were left behind. Enraged, Cochise surrounded the American forces, demanding the release of his people. Tensions escalated, and the Apache retaliated with a series of deadly attacks, marking the beginning of a decade-long war. Geronimo, perhaps the most famous of all Apache leaders, became a symbol of defiance and resistance. His ability to evade capture for years and lead daring raids made him a legendary figure. Geronimo's tactical brilliance and deep understanding of the land allowed him to outsmart the U.S. military repeatedly. He and his followers moved swiftly through the desert, launching surprise attacks on settlements and military outposts, then disappearing into the mountains before the army could respond. The rugged terrain of the Southwest, difficult for outsiders to navigate, became the Apache's natural fortress. The Apache's mastery of guerrilla warfare made them one of the most feared opponents in U.S. military history. Their hit-and-run tactics, launched from hidden positions in the desert, mountains, and canyons, left their enemies disoriented and vulnerable. The U.S. Army, unaccustomed to fighting in such harsh conditions, struggled to keep up with the relentless Apache warriors. The Apache's ability to navigate the difficult terrain, coupled with their unparalleled knowledge of the land, allowed them to vanish as quickly as they appeared. Their attacks were swift and devastating, targeting both military forces and civilian settlements, leaving destruction in their wake. The Apache's resistance was not only about military strategy, it was about survival. They were fighting to protect their lands, culture, and way of life. The U.S. government's attempts to civilize the Apache were seen as an existential threat to their identity. For the Apache, resistance was about more than just defending territory, it was about preserving their sovereignty as a people. Their determination to fight, even in the face of overwhelming odds, made them a symbol of Native American defiance. The Apache Wars, which spanned over 5 decades, were among the longest and most brutal conflicts between Native Americans and the U.S. Army. The wars only came to an end in 1886 when Geronimo, after years of resistance, finally surrendered. Yet, even in defeat, the spirit of the Apache was never broken. Their legacy as fierce, unyielding warriors lives on, a testament to their strength and resilience in the face of impossible adversity. The Apache's military prowess, cultural heritage, and indomitable will to fight for their land and people ensure their place as one of the most feared and respected Native American tribes in history. The U.S. Army feared the Apache not just for their ferocity, but for their extraordinary military tactics. Their hit-and-run strategies, combined with their intimate knowledge of the land, made them elusive and deadly. Apache warriors were experts at launching sudden, devastating attacks and disappearing into the rugged landscape before their enemies could react. The harsh desert, which was an obstacle to most, was an ally to the Apache. They used it to their advantage, striking with precision and vanishing into the wilderness, leaving their enemies frustrated and disoriented. The Apache resistance, led by legendary figures like Geronimo and Cochise, was rooted in their deep connection to the land. They fought not just for survival, but for their way of life, for their culture, and for their future. Their story, like that of the Lakota Sioux, is one of defiance, resilience, and unyielding strength in the face of overwhelming odds. Despite their eventual defeat, the Apache's legacy endures as a powerful reminder of the Native American struggle for sovereignty and survival. Their tactical brilliance, cultural strength, and fierce will to resist the U.S. Army ensure their place in history as one of the most iconic Native American tribes to ever confront an invading force. The Apache and Comanche, two of the most formidable Native American tribes, were masters of mounted warfare, forever altering the landscape of U.S. frontier expansion. The Apache, led by legendary figures such as Cochise and Geronimo, were relentless in their guerrilla warfare tactics. Their skill in navigating the rugged deserts and mountains of the Southwest allowed them to strike swiftly and vanish before their enemies could retaliate. When mounted on horses, the Apache became even more formidable, covering vast distances in short periods, enabling surprise raids and quick escapes. The U.S. Army found itself outmatched in terrain it barely understood, constantly struggling to engage the Apache in traditional battles. The small, highly mobile Apache units rarely gathered in large groups, making them difficult to pin down, and when they did, the U.S. military knew devastation would soon follow. This fear of the Apache's ability to unite and form massive war parties kept the Army on edge, leading them to attack any Apache group, regardless of size. These years of bloody conflict culminated in decades of military campaigns that only temporarily subdued the tribe. Despite this, the Apache spirit and tenacity remained unbroken, a living example of native resilience. But as feared as the Apache were, the Comanche proved to be an even more terrifying foe for the U.S. Army. Known as some of the greatest horsemen in history, the Comanche dominated the southern plains, their mastery of horseback warfare allowing them to terrorize settlers and rival tribes alike. The Comanche, unlike any other tribe, turned mounted warfare into an art form. Their ability to fight while riding at full speed was unparalleled, and they were among the first Native Americans to acquire horses from the Spanish, using them to their advantage. They dominated the Texas frontier, their raids so efficient and brutal that settlers dreaded the sight of the Comanche moon, the full moon under which many of their raids were conducted. The Comanche fought not only for resources such as horses, captives, and goods but also for pride and the maintenance of their dominance across the plains. Warfare was central to Comanche life, and their reputation for brutality in battle and their harsh treatment of captives was feared by all. However, it's crucial to recognize that the Comanche were also victims of violence, and some of the stories of their atrocities were likely exaggerated by settlers to justify their efforts to eliminate the tribe. One infamous event was the Council House fight in 1840, sparked by the story of Matilda Lockhart, a young girl captured and allegedly abused by the Comanche. This event, marked by violence and betrayal, fueled the settlers' desire for retribution, intensifying the conflicts with the tribe. The Comanche's impact on the frontier was undeniable. Their relentless raids and military dominance slowed the westward expansion and forced the U.S. Army to rethink its strategies. The Army quickly learned that traditional warfare tactics were useless against the Comanche's mounted warriors, who could strike swiftly and retreat before the Army could mount a defense. The Comanche's expert horsemanship and their ability to navigate the plains made them a constant, terrifying presence. The U.S. Army found itself outmaneuvered time and again, facing an enemy that understood the land better than they ever could. The Comanche, like the Apache, were led by exceptional leaders, with Quanah Parker standing out as one of the most renowned. Quanah, the last chief of the Quahati band, was not only a brilliant tactician but also a skilled diplomat. His mixed heritage, his mother was a white woman who had been integrated into the tribe, gave him a unique understanding of both native and settler cultures, making him an even more effective leader. Under Quanah's leadership, the Comanche fought fiercely to preserve their way of life, and although they eventually had to negotiate with the U.S. government, their legacy as masters of the plains remained intact. Both the Apache and Comanche tribes left an indelible mark on American history. Their fierce resistance to U.S. expansion and their unmatched military skills earned them a place as two of the most feared and respected Native American tribes. The U.S. Army, despite its superior numbers and resources, struggled to subdue these tribes, who fought not only for survival but also for the preservation of their culture, land, and way of life. The Apache and Comanche were more than just warriors. They were symbols of Native American resistance, courage, and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. The Comanche, particularly, were known for their unique style of mounted combat. Their development of mounted archery, perfected to the point where they could fire arrows with deadly accuracy while riding at full speed, gave them a significant advantage in open-field battles. This skill allowed them to close in on their enemies, unleash a barrage of arrows, and retreat before their opponents could respond. Their speed, agility, and precision made them one of the most lethal forces the U.S. Army ever encountered. Ultimately, the Apache and Comanche tribes' legacies are remembered for their refusal to submit and their determination to protect their homelands. Their stories serve as powerful reminders of the strength, resilience, and strategic brilliance of Native American peoples who fought against overwhelming forces to defend their way of life. The U.S. Army may have eventually subdued these tribes, but the Apache and Comanche left an everlasting imprint on the history of the American frontier, their courage and resilience continuing to inspire to this day. The Comanche, much like the Apache, were masters of hit-and-run tactics, using their mobility to strike with devastating precision. Their ability to attack unexpected targets made them particularly difficult for the U.S. Army to combat. Military installations and frontier settlements were vulnerable to the swift and sudden Comanche raids, which often left little time for defense. But the Comanche were more than just skilled raiders. They were versatile and adaptable warriors, capable of excelling in various forms of warfare. Whether in large-scale battles, ambushes, or guerrilla warfare, the Comanche consistently displayed a remarkable flexibility, always adjusting their strategies to exploit their enemies' weaknesses. One standout example of their tactical brilliance is the Battle of Adobe Walls in 1864. Despite being outnumbered, the Comanche, alongside their Kiowa and Cheyenne allies, launched a surprise attack on a camp of fortified buffalo hunters in the Texas Panhandle. While the hunters ultimately managed to repel the assault, the battle showcased the Comanche's strategic acumen and their ability to strike where they were least expected. The Comanche's approach to this battle remains a powerful example of their adaptability in the face of challenging odds. The Comanche's success in warfare stemmed from their ability to blend traditional combat techniques with unconventional tactics. Their mobility, speed, and ability to cover vast distances meant that the U.S. Army often found it nearly impossible to predict their movements. Whether striking in small guerrilla raids or engaging in larger conflicts, the Comanche used the land to their advantage, keeping their enemies constantly on edge. For the U.S. Army, the Comanche were not just another Native American tribe to be subdued. They were a formidable military force that could not be underestimated. As part of the broader history of Native American resistance, the Comanche stand alongside the Apache and Lakota as symbols of defiance and survival. These tribes fought not only for their lands but for their very way of life, representing an unyielding resistance to the forces of colonization. Their deep connection to the land, their flexibility in warfare, and their determination to preserve their culture were all essential elements of their legacy. The Comanche, like the Apache and Lakota, were not just warriors, they were defenders of their people's future. And so, dear viewers, we've taken you on a journey through the history of three of the most formidable Native American tribes, the Apache, Lakota, and Comanche. These tribes were forces of nature, galloping across the plains on horseback, fighting with an indomitable spirit to defend their lands. Their battles with the U.S. Army were not merely about war, they were about survival, resilience, and the deep-rooted connection they held to their homeland. These warriors were feared not only for their military skills but for the strength of their spirit, a spirit that refused to bend, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As we reflect on their stories, it's clear that these tribes were not just resisting settlers or the U.S. government. They were fighting for their existence, their culture, and their future. The Apache, Lakota, and Comanche were warriors, but they were also symbols of resistance, representing the enduring strength of Native American tribes in the face of colonization. Their legacy lives on as a testament to their resilience and unbreakable will to protect what was theirs. Thank you for joining us on this historical adventure with Natives Journal. We hope this journey has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to learn more about the incredible history of Native American tribes. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating episodes. Until next time, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next adventure.